Mic check, mic check, mic check. Okay, we're live. Good evening to anybody who's here and or who may see this at a future date. This is probably one of my first videos on YouTube, strictly dedicated to the wrestling scene. Um, I listened to what a few people had to say. I'm specifically waiting to see what Jim Cornette has to say in regards to this whole debacle with WWE or WWF, however which you want to refer it to. When I was a child, I remember growing up watching Macho Man and Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan and Big Boss Man, Sergeant Slaughter. I grew up on this, what's happening, Christos? Um, the WWF, when I was a kid, was like literally seeing your heroes on TV every week. This is something that Vince McMahon had created through amalgamating the territories. Now, mind you, I use the word amalgamating very loosely because basically what he did is what he still does or was doing before he had to resign. He would buy up the competition. Um, he would also do talent poaching. Um, Guys that you see like Ric Flair used to be in NWA. I'm not too sure if Ric Flair was in AWA or if he ever spent time in Smoky Mountain Wrestling or Mid South or whatnot. But basically, you had territories. It definitely in the early '80s and in the '70s. So basically, if you're Smoky Mountain Wrestling or Mid South or you had like your Northeast divisions and whatnot, you basically you'd have your territory. If I were to make an analogy to it, it's kind of like Bad Boy South and Bad Boy North. It's basically like Master P wouldn't try to come throw like a whole bunch of big shows like in how would I say whose territory, basically Big Pun's area, if you will, and vice versa. You left each other's territory alone. You let the competition, if you will, have their space. Everyone was able to work in their own space in their own zone. But when Vince McMahon basically bought the company from his father for let's say $1 or less, and said to his father, "I'll pay you back once the company starts making money," it's Vince McMahon that tried to turn this shit into like a more than a money making process. He tried to take this thing into like TV time and everything. Now, mind you, the NWA in I want to say the mid '80s, it was on TV. I don't know about other promotions that went on like Smoky Mountain. Jim Cornette, he probably had it on TV. Ohio Valley Wrestling, that wasn't there at the yeah. Ohio Valley Wrestling was in its own territory. That later on got bought out by Vince McMahon, WWF, and turned into a developmental program, kind of like a D League to the NBA and so forth, just like they did what's called FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling. Just giving a little backdrop. I'm gonna get into the meat and potatoes in this in a minute, but basically Vince McMahon bought up the territories and was poaching talent in order to make it weak. So your champion or your tag team champions, you'll say, "I got all this money from NBC, who's giving me a TV deal. Come work for me. Like rescind your contract. Come work for me, and I'll make sure you get big money." So even like the Road Warriors, they were from Minnesota. So I don't, yeah, I think they were AWA. When did the WC come out? WCW came out because of guys like Dusty Rhodes, who I've met before. Actually, I met Dusty Rhodes. I met a whole bunch of these wrestlers. So this shit, when you hear that guy in the meme saying it's real to me, it is real. WCW, WWF, like at least back in the '80s, that shit was real. I've met Tommy Dreamer, Christopher Daniels, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes. So I've met Dusty. I've actually wrestled, like high school wrestled Cody Rhodes, right? So Cody Rhodes and I actually go back. And funny enough, I ran into him, I want to say 2017, 2018, Ring of Honor. So I actually have, I won't say like a blood connection to the Dusty Rhodes family, but I met the father and I wrestled the son in the same night. So that was one day that changed my life. Um, where was I getting at this? So yeah, as far as like WCW, that came out because of Dusty Rhodes. Dusty Rhodes had what was it called before it was WCW? It was NWA, but it was something else before that. No, NWA. Yeah, National Wrestling Alliance, and then the NWA split. They formed two factions, if you will, and then one of them I think got the TV deal with Ted Turner, and that's how they were like on weekend TVs and shit. Um, so that's how WCW started. And WCW, you'd be surprised that shit was blowing up in the early '90s because they were like it was on cable TV. You need or basic cable, if you will. You didn't need to have a satellite dish or anything like that. And they'd have their house shows, which is like basically a small arena. Call it 200-300 people. You pay your $10, or at probably at the time probably equivalent to $25 a head, but you're still good. So basically Vince McMahon say, you know what, I'm a talent poach. So basically that's saying, okay, I'm gonna go get it's like what Miami did in the early 2000s with Miami with the NBA basketball team. Well, I'm gonna go get LeBron, or I'm gonna go get Kobe, I'm gonna go get basically bag up all the MVP. So that's what Vince McMahon was doing. And then when those promotions, i.e., let's say the Cavaliers or the Pelicans, they can't make any money because all their stars are gone, that's when Vince comes in with the low ball offer. Are you go bankrupt or I buy you out? So you buy out the roster and then you just crash out the competition. So in a sense, if you really think about it, that's like and this is what he's being sued for right now by a company called MLW. And they're the first one. Excuse me. Let me not say they're the first ones, but at least they're a wrestling promotion with enough balls to call them out or to call out Vince McMahon, because like Vince McMahon did to a company that I really liked, I started getting into what's called Ring of Honor. Tony Khan from AEW just recently bought them out. But what I liked about ROH is that when I started watching ROH, you had Jay Lethal. Jay Lethal, to see a black man hold the world title belt in WWF, it was never going to happen. ROH said, "Fuck that. You could be the TV champ and the world heavyweight champ." And I saw that shit. I was like, you know what? They're doing something different. Now, mind you, WCW had done something similar, and I think Ron, not was it Ron Killings? No, not Ron Killings. He wasn't the first, but he was the second black man in in a major wrestling promotion to carry the heavyweight champion belt. But before him was damn, why am I forgetting his name? Ron Simmons? Yeah, Ron Simmons. He was the first. I want to say that was probably like 91, 92, 93, maybe. But with ROH, I mean, you were actually able to see diversity on Ring of Honor. Ron Simmons, thank you very much. Yeah. So that's what I really appreciate about ROH. You had guys like ACH. The guy's like he's short, but he's fucking jacked. Um, who else? Jonathan Gresham. They call him the Octopus. This guy, if you guys are familiar with the guy named Jack Saber Jr., who does what's called catch wrestling, it's basically grappling, but the dude will basically tie you up in a pretzel and pin you before you even know what happened. So they had Jonathan Gresham, they had ACH, they had Patrice Coleman, Jay Lethal. Who else they have? To see black men actually be able to hold belts and be in positions of prominence in a wrestling promotion, aside from what WCW did with Harlem Heat and others, right? I was enamored by that. But again, there was talent poaching there. Our Vince McMahon tried to buy up like a whole bunch of their talent, and they eventually left for WWF. Same shit. But this is his style. Again, this is like Miami saying, okay, we want Steph Curry, we want Kobe, and like if you go and do a trade with somebody, at least make it a fair trade. And this is what MLW is getting at, because what else Vince McMahon would be doing with this fuck shit? Let's say you're the Cleveland Cavaliers and you want to build a new stadium, right? But let's say a team that's nearby. So what's the NBA team close? Okay, so the Milwaukee Bucks say, you know what? We have more power in the NBA, so we're going to make sure that you cannot build that new stadium. So how that relates to the WWF is if ROH, because this actually happened between ROH, they wanted to book a show, right? So they wanted to rent Madison Square Gardens. Let's say how many people fit up in Madison Square Gardens? 20,000, right? As opposed to some of the regular shows where you can only get like let's say 3,000 in the building, if that. So they wanted ROH rather wanted to book a building, Madison Square Gardens, and Vince McMahon called in and threatened Madison Square Gardens and said, "If you let them book here, we're never coming back." So what Vince McMahon does to these smaller promotions is that he tries to bully them, and he does bully them. He bullies the third parties. Like I said, your vendors, the place that you could rent the building. So if it's Staples Center and New Japan, because this happened too. New Japan should be suing Vince McMahon and getting on this bandwagon. I don't know if it should be class action or it should be multiple suits. I think it should be multiple suits because then they might be forced to settle. But what I learned from a dude who did a similar podcast, and he obviously this guy had a lot more information I did. He did his research. I'm just doing a reaction and opinionary video on this, and I'm getting at Booker T in this in particular. With the lawsuit that's coming, or actually in motion, I should say, WWF or WWE, however you want to refer to them, they are being forced to divulge a lot of their information as to who they have been targeting because they are being sued for poaching as well. Not only do they try to stop other promotions from booking venues, they also poach their talent while they're under contract. So again, taking this to like an NBA or NFL reference, let's say you have trying to think of a quarterback out the blue here, Lamar Jackson out of the Baltimore Ravens, and then you have Jerry Jones coming to him, Lamar Jackson, while he's still in the contract to the Ravens and say, "Yo, I'll give you this much money if you leave right now." This is what Vince McMahon has been doing since like the late 70s, early 80s with this shit. If someone is on their contract and they work for a different company in a different territory, so let's say you have an NFC team trying to poach a quarterback who's on their contract, or a running back or a linebacker, or what have you, out of a team out the AFC, right? He never respected boundaries, right? Because he's the biggest fish in the pond here. He thinks that he can just go around and then bullyfoot not only the vendors, not only the suppliers, but the talent themselves, the wrestlers, because they're considered contractors, not employees. So that's where Vince McMahon has fucked himself up pretty damn good too. In regards to him and MLW and New Japan, who should be suing him as well, I think there are a lot of promotions that should be suing Vince McMahon as well. Companies like Evolve Wrestling, since he bought them out too. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, PWG. Who else did he buy out? Chikara Wrestling. So these are independent promotions that move around, right? And Vince McMahon thinks he has the right to poach them. That sounds like a great business, man. It's also unfair competition. He just like you have antitrust, man. You get. Didn't you see how Facebook and they're trying to bust apart? Yeah, definitely Facebook. They're trying to bust that apart. I think they got into some similar shit too. Facebook for antitrust. They try to block competition. They with the newspapers. Newspapers are saying, "Yo, what's going on?" Facebook is not a media group, but they get government subsidy, and they're taking our business. Same way Vince McMahon does to other promotions. He doesn't let them have a fair competition, right? How can you, like I said, let's say you're a team in NFL. Okay, so you're the Carolina Panthers, and then a team that's in proximity, let's say the Tennessee Titans or the Atlanta Falcons. They combine their muscle to make sure that you can only get half your stadium full. How are you supposed to go after contracts with or trying to sign free agents if they do everything they can to make sure that you don't have money in your pockets? That's not fair competition. This is what MLW is saying. This is what New Japan Pro Wrestling should be saying. New Japan Wrestling came to North America for the first time in God knows how many years. I want to say 2018, 2019. I think it was like 2018, 2019. And Vince McMahon tried to make sure they couldn't book a venue. Same shit he did to ROH. I'm not trying to repeat myself, but this is what he does. It's not fair competition. So how did the other organizations promote their events before Vince McMahon came around? They had territories. before Vince McMahon came, you had territories. So you had like Mid South, you had like if you ever heard of the Von Erich family, they're from like Texas, so they had their areas. So you'd have Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Arizona, New Mexico, if you will. And the guys who are from Tennessee, or at least the promotions who are in Tennessee, let's say for example, for like an NFL reference, if the Houston Texans have, obviously they have their own team, and then you would have no interference out of respect for boundaries out of teams out of New York, if you will. Let them promote their games, let them do their shit. Don't fuck with their vendors, don't fuck with their suppliers. Let them eat. We can all eat. Just stay in your territory. What Vince McMahon did is he started poaching not only talent but staff, and he tried to fuck over people's contracts so they vendors and suppliers can work together. So basically, he starved them out, and then he went in and then bought them up when they were cheap, when they for pennies on the dollar, if you will. But he put them in a position where they got fucked up because he didn't want to respect the business, if you will. So what I'm saying in regards, I Booker T is a former wrestler, Harlem Heat. You might remember him from WWS or WCW rather, with Stevie Ray. He has a podcast, and I hit him up with the super chat. That's how he reads majority of the comments there. If you super chat, he's got to eat. Mind you, one of Vince McMahon's policy is if you work for him as a contractor, right? What Vince, and I'm gonna say it again, if you work for Vince McMahon as a contractor, he puts it in the contract that you are not allowed to work anywhere else. If I'm a contractor, let's say I'm a tow truck driver, I'm a contractor, I just run your logo, or I'm an Amazon, or I'm just a private delivery truck. If I deliver for, let's say, Walmart, and then Walmart tells me, okay, you work for us 3 days a week, but you're not allowed to work anywhere else. This is what Vince McMahon does. So if I'm, let's say, and you can look this up for yourself, AJ Styles, or if I'm Adam Cole, and I do Twitch, or I do what I'm doing right now as a wrestler and talk to my fans, and they give me super chat, Vince McMahon said you're not allowed to do that, right? So what type of bullshit is that? It's either I'm a contractor or I'm an employee. So I'm trying to remember if that shit went to court, but I know that kicked up a whole bunch of stink. But AEW is different. AEW allows you to work for them and then make your money on the side. But what I was getting at with the territories, yeah, you asked me how Vince McMahon fucked everything up. That's what he did. But with Booker T, I asked him a question. I said, hey, I got here a little bit late, but I'm hoping you hold Vincent Kennedy McMahon is his name, accountable, and give him a fair amount of criticism for what he's done. If you're not aware, Vince McMahon, a lot of shit has come to the light. He's been doing a whole bunch of Donald Trump shit on the side. Basically, he groped up and allegedly groped and allegedly sexually assaulted and or raped a couple of not interns, paralegals, what have you. Then on top of that, after he was done with them, he passed them off to another guy named John Laurinaitis. So all this shit happened about 25, 30 plus years ago, and all of it started bubbling up to the top. Now it started bubbling up to the top. It came from the board of directors, which he was a member of, and basically the drama behind the stage or in the corporate office is more drama than what's on the TV right now. So as I was saying, I told Booker, I requested the Booker T, hey, make sure you give fair and proper criticism to Vince McMahon based on what he's done, because it sets a very bad morale. It's very bad for business. Keep in mind, the board of directors, after they forced Vince to resign, not quit, but resign, he hit him up probably like the first week of or the last week of December and said, I'm coming back. The board of directors, they voted unanimously to say, no, you're not coming back. You're going to fuck up the business. That's basically what they said in the letter. And he's like, nah, fuck it. I still got 81% of the shares. The company's mine. I'm coming back. And long story short, he wants to sell the company. He so far allegedly Saudi Arabia is the highest bidder, but Saudi Arabia, they give money to terrorist organizations, a lot of human rights shit. They slaughter their people. Jamal Khashoggi, they kill Americans, and they think it's okay. A whole bunch of WWF wrestlers refuse to go over there, but because they're paying Vince McMahon like 3 times what he gets over here, he goes over there. signed a 10-year contract to hold shows there every year, and that's what he does. So that's basically the background of Vince McMahon and his bullshit. So I said, yo, Booker T, are you gonna hold this guy accountable for the shit that he's done and or said? Not in those exact words, a little bit more diplomatic. Let me read this comment real quick. Pepsi is the same way. Their employees, you better not walk up to their facility with a Coke product, you'll be fired. Yeah, that's kind of fucked up. So I think Booker T's comments. Now, mind you, I'm not that I'm going at Booker T. I'm not going to be disrespectful, but the fact is, the man put the whole thing on private after he said, "Hey, if you're his little his co-host Brad Gilmore, I think his name is, said, yeah, okay, if you hear about 10 minutes late, you can go back and rewind it. Yeah, we did criticize Vince McMahon, but at the same time, they got to give Vince McMahon a whole bunch of work because he's the one that his private actions came back and fucked up the company, because now the company is going to be mired in a whole bunch of shit. If I'm NBC or let's say ABC or Amazon or Netflix or Disney or Warner Brothers, which is the parent company to the competition AEW, mind you. If I'm Discovery Warner Brothers is teamed up. If I'm Comcast, if I'm, let's say I'm Hulu or what have you, just a hypothetical, am I really going to buy a company that is mired in controversy because the current CEO is an alleged sexual assaultist, rapist, and or the company is being sued on multiple fronts for not necessarily antitrust. I don't want to get the wrong terminology here, but some form of antitrust malpractice, if you will, towards at least at this current time MLW. But there's probably going to be more, right? Being that, as I stated earlier, a whole bunch of information about MLW, or excuse me, about WWF's practices in regards to obtaining talent is going to come out, right? How they try to pursue talent, what they say to talent, what happens if they say no, what happens if they say yes, and what they offer these guys. Because MLW is trying to say, yo, we're a very small fish in the pond here. We have a 16th, if that, or a 64th of the budget that you have. Why are you trying to fight us? Why are you doing everything you can to poach our talent and then make sure that we can't come up? You're trying to block our TV deal. You're trying to block us with I know they had something in the works. I know Jim Cornette covered it probably about a year plus. Tubi, which is a streaming platform. So this is another micro. So Netflix ain't trying to come out here and fight Tubi. Amazon ain't coming out here trying to fight Tubi. But WWF think that this shit is necessary to fight them. Another little case in point here is I'd say about 2 years ago, AEW had their B show, if you will. I think it was on Tuesday nights, and then all of a sudden, WWF wants to move NXT to the same night. And then if you put the two shows on the same night, you're splitting the viewership. Triple H, Paul Levesque at the time, Vince McMahon's son-in-law, was saying, "Yo, don't do this because we can't." No, it wasn't their B show. They put them on Wednesday night to compete with AEW's top show, and it fucked up NXT. They couldn't compete. The numbers weren't there. So that being said, that just caused a whole bunch of shit for Triple H. They put blame on him that wasn't really his doing, if you will. They I think they were on like Tuesday nights at the time, and their ratings were fine. And Vince McMahon said, "Yo, we can't have our competition be on the air if we're on the air." So he put them on there. He put a small show up against AEW's big show. They couldn't compete. They got their ass whipped in the numbers, and then Triple H basically got demoted. Now, going back to Booker T and the fair competition thing, I hit him up with another super chat, and I say, "Yo, what's going on with the lawsuit that MLW is?" And Booker T said something along the lines of, "Anybody." I'm trying to paraphrase as best I can. Booker T said, "Anybody in MLW is waiting for a phone call from Vince McMahon," and he said that with a little bit of spice in his voice, but okay, that's his choice. My whole thing is, if I'm a wrestler, for example, a guy named EJ Nduka, right? also known as a judge when he was in WWF, because he was in WWF in their NXT under the trial. He's their training and shit, and then they cut him. So he went back, or he went rather, to MLW. MLW, mind you, is a wrestling promotion that was founded by someone, a writer or somebody within an upper level of staff, if you will, who used to work for WWF. The guy said, Court Bauer, he said, "Fuck this, I'm gonna start my own shit." Kudos on him, right? MLW's been up and running for at least 10 years, at least. So the fact that he's able to start his own shit and keep it afloat for 10 years, I'm not going to hate on Court Bauer for that. But as I was saying, EJ Nduka, guy's fucking huge. Got to be like 6'8". He's huge. I think he had a trial. I know he was playing in the CFL, and I think he played in a couple. I don't know about NFL, but I know he's big. He's chiseled. He's big and he's chiseled, and as someone, I think Jim Cornette said, he's Vince McMahon's every dream, right? Huge, jack, tall, big, everything. As I said, and at WWF they cut him. He then went to MLW. Got the tag team belts after a bit. Did pretty good. I want to say EJ Nduka's been there for about a year, maybe a year and a half, because I kind of fell away from MLW over the last year or so. But then now he's challenging for the world belt, the world the championship belt. And now apparently he just dropped the term in wrestling is called drop the title. He just lost the title, if you will, purposely because he got a call from WWF. Like Booker T said, all these guys are waiting for a call from WWF. But if I'm EJ Nduka and I'm seeing all this bullshit going on with WWF, I'm like, yo, let me make sure before my contract runs out with MLW, or let me see if I can re-sign a contract with MLW, because I don't necessarily want to go up into WWF if they're going to be running all this bullshit. If you got a pending sale of a company, okay, so how do I know where this company is going to be in 3 years, in 5 years? Are they going to renew my contract? Are they going to cancel my contract? I'm speaking obviously if I'm EJ Nduka, because I was promised ABC under Triple H. And now Vince McMahon is coming back, and he's gonna forcing his way back, I should say, because he exercised his 81% shareholder and power on the board of chairman here, to force, like, I think two people quit, and he forced 3 people out, and then he installed 2 of his own people who he previously fired before, because it's either do what I say or I'm gonna fire you again. And now he basically has he majority vote on the chairman of the board, so he can do it whatever he wants. If I'm EJ Nduka, I don't want to work for this company anymore, because I don't know. First off, it was Triple H that was running this shit before, or Vince McMahon's son-in-law Triple H was running this shit, and now this guy forces his way back on the board after the board voted unanimously to keep him away. What I want to do is I want to work for a company that has stability. Just like foreign countries, they want to invest in a country with a stable government. If I'm a contractor where I am not entitled to workers' rights, all I have is a contract which they hold over my head. Vince McMahon, who's been doing some unstable shit, I don't want to work for this guy. Let alone if I know they're going to sell the company, my contract ain't worth the paper it's written on. Even the people who work for WWF right now know their contract ain't worth nothing, because God knows what the Saudis going to do if and when the Saudis get a hold of it. Let alone if it's bought out by Time Warner, if it's bought out by Comcast, if it's bought out by TBS. I'm throwing up hypotheticals, right? I would rather the company not sell, and then I work there at least to the end of my contract. Or to my knowledge, WWF has not come to the current roster and said, okay, here's a contract guarantee, and if we breach the contract, here's X amount of $100,000 if we breach. They haven't done this. Now, mind you, Stephanie McMahon, Triple H's wife, who's also Vince McMahon's daughter, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon, or a couple of the people of the board members, who, mind you, all voted to keep Vince out of there, said we voted him out and we voted to keep him out. Both decisions were unanimous. But again, he exercises 81%. Now I'm back. That's what he's doing. So if I'm EJ and Duke, I want to work for Stephanie, and I want to work for Triple H, and because Stephanie was on call with the not even with the wrestlers. This is where it really gets fucked up. This is as per either WrestleMania said this or Jim Cornette. I think it was Jim Cornette said this, that as of Friday, Stephanie McMahon was on the phone just to the staff. Apparently, it was a 3-minute meeting, under 10 minutes, definitely under 10 minutes. And the meeting was, everybody, don't worry, nothing's going to change, everything's going to stay the same. Remain calm. We know he's coming back. We didn't want him back, but he's coming back. We'll keep this ship afloat. We're not going to let him fuck things up. That was Friday. Tuesday, Stephanie McMahon resigned. If I'm someone in MLW or Impact or New Japan or any other independent or what they call the indies, I don't want to sign with WWF. If the same person, now mind you, Stephanie McMahon was a co-CEO. She said, "Don't worry, we're going to keep things fine. Everything's going to be okay. We'll keep the ship right. We'll make this work." That's Friday. She's gone by Tuesday. She resigned. She quit. The same person that told you everything gonna be okay, she the one turn around and quit. I don't want to work for this company. The people the contractors or the wrestlers there now, they don't want to work there. And rightfully so. Somehow the stock has gone up because people think it's going to be a pending sale. But this is a video I need to do, and I'm probably going to do, and hopefully it catches a lot of traction. Just like Elon Musk. You have you have at least these two CEOs of major companies who are doing damage. Luckily for Vince, at least not yet, the stock hasn't tanked. But if we look at Elon Musk, when a CEO of a company starts doing a whole bunch of wild and crazy shit, you can see the stock is losing. Elon Musk lost, what did he lose? 200 billion? 200 billion he's lost in God knows how many months, right? So what makes you think that Vince McMahon's erratic behavior, mind you, the pending sexual assault alleged sexual assault I'll say the word, the pending rape charges. We don't know yet, but what we do know is that alleged rape, What we do know is that the board of directors said there's more stuff that we know about that hasn't made public yet. I'll say it again. The board of directors who both unanimously voted to kick him out of the board of directors and voted unanimously to keep him from coming back says there are more skeletons jumping around in the closet. They're going to come out. So if I'm a stockholder, yeah, the stock has gone up from $70.94, I want to say, the latter, I think, Friday of last week, and now it's, I think, 85. So yeah, the stock has jumped because people think there's going to be a sale. But what happens when people find out what Vince has been doing, both in his personal life, the alleged sexual assaults, alleged rapes, what have you, and then you have all the shit that he's doing behind the scenes, like jumping over the stockholders' heads and shit. As a matter of fact, Vince McMahon has been sued. This was, I want to say, a year plus ago, by a bunch of stockholders saying, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing?" So my question, again, I'm just trying to draw a line between the erratic behavior of Vince McMahon and Elon Musk. Elon Musk has not been charged in a court of crime, at least not yet. But what I am saying is that both the CEOs are doing a lot of erratic shit, and it just like at least in Elon's case, it has affected the company. So I'm just curious, how long is this run up gonna keep going? Right? Allegedly the sale had already happened, but they got to get approval. They have to get approval from the stockholders before they can sell. Now, mind you, the case that the shareholders were putting up was like a year plus ago, so it's still pending. So how you gonna sell a company while you're in court with your shareholders about the bullshit? Well, the bullshit you've been doing, and now there's more skeletons in the closet. The fuck? That's gonna be something. I'm gonna probably come back on that shit on the weekend when I have more time on the weekend, and I'm gonna jump into that topic because that's a very good question. Let's think about that. A CEO's actions fuck up the company, and you're a stockholder. Let's say you got 3,000 in it. Let's say you got your IRA tied up in that shit, your 401k. I'm saying, like, yo, what the fuck? It's one thing if you're making a bad decision. It's another thing that you're doing shit in your personal life and then bringing it inside the company and fucking up the company, like Elon and now like Vince. The two of them are very similar. I'm just curious how bad and when is the nosedive going to start for WWF. Anyhow, thank you guys for coming. That's my time. Booker T, you didn't have to private the video, man. You didn't have to private the video. If I understand, Booker T addressed him being labeled not necessarily a shill, right? But Booker T commented, "Oh, every time I say something about AEW, people say I'm saying something negative." No, he said, "No, that's not the case." Okay, I can respect that, but at the same time, Booker T, I would appreciate if you could say something negative about Vince McMahon when he's actively doing wrong. To be fair, yeah, I was about 10 minutes late to when the live started, but I would also like you to at least reiterate your disapproval for his actions, not only in the business world but in personal life. You can still be someone's friend and call them out. Was it James Baldwin said if you love a country or love America so much, you should be willing to call it when it's wrong. If he's your friend, you should be willing to call him out and say, "Yo, you're doing wrong, Vince, and you're hurting the company." Just like reality or wrestling, Booker T, you try to send your guys to the WWF, but if Vince McMahon is there kicking up all this bullshit in the office, outside the office, and or having alleged sexual assaults or rapes of women in the limo, doesn't that hurt your potential stars, the people you're trying to train and send to WWF? Doesn't that hurt them, their future prospects? WWF needs to be there, and I don't know how WWF is going to be there if Vince McMahon is allowed to keep up his bullshit and nobody calls him out, or at least blasts his ass on a regular basis until he resigns and never comes back. Vince McMahon's a piece of shit. Thanks for having me tonight. Y'all have a good night.